Hello, and welcome to this week episode of 777 Awakening News with a Red Pill newsletter. I am your host, Tommy. Today will be a special edition called Annual Laws with Colorful Attribute. Today, reading from Matthew's, the book of Matthew, verse 16. And it reads there like this: Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Today we'll be taking some chapters out of Mr. Freeman book on the black law on called UCC Connections. Okay, so to this end, Mr. Freeman offers a simple, hopeful explanation of our polite and a peaceful method of dealing with the United States Constitution. Please take note that this is a lecture representing one chapter in the book of Mr. Freeman's book, not the whole book, one chapter. Plus, this is only for entertainment purposes only. Disclosure. Only for entertainment purposes, not educational. This is not legal advice. Okay? So take note of all that. Understanding this, which is always, and we all that do the research on this is always with just our knowledge, refining, explaining, and improving the same knowledge. It is as all bit of wisdom to learn as it sounds. Isaiah 11 and 2. And read Isaiah 11 and 2. It said, and there shall come forth, and the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord. So, to that point, we're departing from ignorance, well, total ignorance anyway. You might be still a little dumb after this, after these series of lessons that we're getting ready to give. And this is only part one of the lesson. So I'm going to now take you on a journey in the world of knowledge and understanding that we all might be able to pass this knowledge and wisdom on to others and help others in circumstances, in greater circumstances, and with a greater knowledge, and more that we're refined in the knowledge, and the more that we learn, the more hope, and the more God can work the gift of living in our life along with perfect peace, freedom, and praise to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, Yahushua the Messiah. This lecture was prepared to make the availability of the knowledge and the explanation of Mr. Freeman's book, the review of his research, for an acceptable and an understandable explanation of such a confused subject of state of the government and its courts. They make it confusing also. So it should be helpful to those who may have difficulty learning from such lectures, or those who want to deepen their understanding of this information without having to go through hours and hours of audio books, of articles, and listening materials just to get what we're going to compact in this uh, small Bible study right now. This the confusion of many Americans feel about our jurisdiction system can be overwhelming and oftentimes frustrated too. And like most Americans, we fear eventually with the seemingly uh, economical power of some government agencies that run these courts and these corporate agencies that run these that are found in the jurisdiction of some of these counties are and with even with all the awesome power of the courts, uh, we most of the time have been taught all our life that we must get a good lawyer to be an overcomer in such a way where the Bible never explained overcoming in this way in the Bible. So getting a good attorney and then watching it all becoming increasingly difficult, if not impossible, to win a case. Uh, if we are defending ourselves from the government, we find out very quickly that that lawyer that we just paid tons of money to, and then he tell us as the ship is sinking, I can't help you with that. I'm an officer of the court. So now all of a sudden, unfortunately, the officer of the court, which you paid tons of money to, can't help you with that. Unfortunately, the only way for us to have even a snowball's chance in winning any case completely, I'm talking about free completely. Sometimes the handcuffs are invisible handcuffs. So any chance that we hit, I mean, the only chance that we might have is to understand the rules in the game that they play. And secondly, is to come to an understanding of the true nature of the law. And this is in any case, whether it's financial, criminal, or civil. So the attorney's lawyer have established and secured a virtual monopoly over this area that we are dumbfounded in. So since we don't even understand how we should present ourselves in the doing process and doing it, they also make money off of not just human knowledge, but implying that the subject is just too difficult for the average person to understand, and by them they create a separate vocabulary out of the English language, words and otherwise that are of their common use, dumbfound for us to speak, making it difficult for us to even say anything. While it may at times seem hopefully plain, but it is not that difficult to grasp if you really look at it. Really, are lawyers really as smart as they will have us to believe? Do somebody have to go to prison for 5 years, searching the law library for years and years just to get this information and become free all of a sudden? Well, besides, anyone has been taught through anyone been that done and been through this a legal battle against the government with the aid of a lawyer or attorney have come to realize that the lawyer uh, that you learn that the lawyers are about producing process, not law. So they time wasters. They have to produce process and sell paperwork. So in Mr. Freeman book, he admit that he is not an attorney. He is not a lawyer, and as much as as he used to be a lawyer, he's an ex-lawyer, but he explaining to law to us as an ex-lawyer that puts it well within our reach of understanding. So consider also that the framers of the Constitution of our law a long time ago, they wrote in a language that is simple enough that any people could understand. So simply for us to understand, so that it would not have to be interpreted by anyone. So again, we find, as in many other areas of our life, that the buck stops here. Welcome on to this journey of knowledge that will free your mind from some things that is not allowed on YouTube, period. But we're here for entertainment purposes, so it's okay. It is we who must take the responsibility for finding and putting to good use the truth. It is we who must claim and defend our God-given rights and our freedom from those who will oppose on it and who try to take it from us. It is we who must protect ourselves, protect our families, protect all our loved ones, protect everyone that we care about. So, this will no longer be invisible knowledge to you. This is something that you can start. This is a fire that you can start. Take your learning skills and labor and your talents and put it on this for a moment. Put your focus on this for a moment and not just learn from it, research it, and get what I'm saying. Let this rabbit trail, and you stay on this journey. I'm going to get off the boat and eventually, but you're going to have to take this to heart. So the introduction in Mr. Freeman book read, I was asked to testify in a tax case as an expert witness. After many days of preparation, I felt confident of my research. I spent over 30 minutes presenting many Superior Court decisions that supported the defendant's position. The prosecutor concluded his statement, and to my amazement, the judge told the jury that they could only consider certain facts, none of which of the facts that I had given, that I had presented. So as soon as the trial was over, I went around to the judge's office and he was just coming in through his back door. I said, "Judge, by what authority do you overturn the standing decision of the United States Superior Court? You sat on the bench while I read the case law. Now, how do you, a district judge, have the authority to overturn the decision of the Superior Court?" He said, "Oh, those were old decisions." I said, "Those are standing decisions. They have never been overturned." "I don't care, Judge, how old they are. You have no right to overturn a standing decision of the United States Superior Court in a district court." So, understanding public law versus public policy law. The judge said, "Name any decision of the Superior Court after 1938 and I honor it. But all the decisions you read were prior to 1938 and I don't honor these decisions." I asked the judge, "What happened in 1938? He said, "Prior to 1938, the Superior Court was dealing with public law. Since 1938, the Superior Court has dealt with public policy law. The change that Mr. S, not saying his name, was being tried for is a public policy statute, not public law, and those Superior Court cases do not apply to public policy." I asked the judge, "What happened in 1938? He said that he had already told me too much. He wasn't going to tell me anymore." So 1938 in the Erie Railroad. Well, I began to investigate. I found that 1938 was the year of the Erie Railroad versus Tompkins case of the Superior Court. It was also the year that the courts claimed that they blended law with equity. I read the Erie Railroad case. A man had tried to sue the Erie Railroad for damages when he was stuck by a board sticking out of a boxcar as he was walking along beside the railroad track. So the district court had decided on the basis of commercial, which is a negotiable instrument, commercial law, that this man was not under any contract with the Erie Railroad, and therefore he had no standing to sue the company. Under the common law, he was damaged, and he would have had the right to sue. This overturned a standing decision of over 100 years. Swift versus Tyson in 1840 was a similar case, and the decision of the Superior Court was that in any case of this type, the court would judge the case on the common law of the state where the incident occurred. In this case, Pennsylvania. But in the Erie Railroad case, the Superior Court ruled that all federal cases will be judged under the negotiable instrument law. There will be no more decisions based on common law at the federal level. So here we find the blending of law with equity. This was a puzzle to me as I put those new pieces together. I determined that all our cases since 1938 were merchant law courts and not common law courts. There were still some pieces of the puzzle missing, though. So I made a friend in the court. So fortunately, I made a friend of a judge. Now you won't make friends with a judge if you go into court like a wolf in black sheep country. Nope, you probably won't. You must approach him like as though you are the sheep and he is the wolf. If you go into court as a wolf, you make demands and tell the judge what the law is and how he had better uphold the law or else. But remember these verses. The verse that we read in front of this video, I send you out as sheep in the wolf country. Be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. We have to go into court and be wise and harmless and not make demands. We must play a little dumb and ask a lot of questions. Well, I asked a lot of questions and I actually boxed the judge into a corner where they had to either give me a victory or admit that they don't want to, something that they don't want to admit. But I won the case, and on the way out, I had to stop by the clerk's office to get some papers. So one of the judges stopped and said, "You're an interesting young man, Mr. Freeman. If you're ever in town, stop by, and if I'm not sitting on a bunch of cases, we will visit." So understanding an American is bankrupt. So continue the story later on. When I went to visit the judge, I told him my problem with the Superior Court cases dealing with public policy rather than public law. He said in 1938, all the highest judges and the top attorneys of the courts and the U.S. attorneys were called into a secret meeting, and this is what we were told. Well, America is bankrupt. A bankrupt nation that is owned completely and entirely by its creditors. The creditors own the Congress, they own the executive branches, they own the judicial system, and they own all the state's government. So, talk silent about this. Notice of this one fact, but never reveal it openly. Your court is opening and operating in an annual jurisdiction. So call it anything you want. but don't openly call it exactly what it is. An annual jurisdiction, nationally, annual court. The reason they cannot call it an annual jurisdiction is that your defense would be quite difficult in an annual jurisdiction. From your defense under the common law in an annual court, there is no court. There's no such thing. There's no court which has a jurisdiction under annual, unless there is a void international contract in dispute. So if you know what a annual jurisdiction is, and they have to admit on record, in record court, that you are in an annual court, you can determine that the international maritime contract to be which you are supposedly a partner in which you have breached the contract be placed into evidence. So no court have an annual maritime jurisdiction unless there is a void international maritime contract that has been breached. So you say just innocently like a lamb. Say it like this. Real soft. Well, Judge, I don't know that I got involved with a international maritime contract. So in good faith, I deny that such a contract even exists to me. If this court is taking a jurisdictional and annual, then pursuant to Section 3-501 of the UCC presentment, the prosecutor will have no differently placing a analogy contract into evidence so that I may examine and possibly challenge the validation of contract in which I breached. So what they will have to do is place the national debt into evidence, because that's what the contract is. So, but the contract kind of plays in your favor a little bit. It just dressed up. It's unformed information not made for you to know. So they will have to admit that the international bankers own the whole nation and that we are all their slaves. So not explainedly, but the banker said it is not ready at this time to admit that they own everything and could foreclose on every nation of the whole world. The reason they don't want to tell everyone that they own everything is that there are still too many privately owned guns, weapons out there. This is why the government does everything to protect them, their bosses. Everything to do to protect them by confiscating every single weapon. You know this person is not on our side when he's, of course, operating for the cabal. But because there's too many weapons, because there are too many, uh, uh, because they're offending the Republican of the law. So we the people are the ones that they are slaving. And to the ones who, of course, who just wants to be dumb, they offer some type of benefit without, and it's uniform and it's unformed. So there are uncorporated armies and other military forces that, of course, the cabal will have to face if they was found to be the ones that are uh, the owners of the United States Corporation, which is the Federal Reserve. So until they can gradually consolidate all the armies and take everybody's weapons, bust in your home, bust you in the head, take your guns, put everybody on probation, own everybody, put microchips in everybody. So until the world's army is one world army and all the courts in a single world court, it is not expected for them to admit in a jurisdictional way of the courts that are operating under them to admit who they are. So when we family understand these things, we realize the invisible cups, and since they're invisible, we can easily take them off. But there are certain secrets that they don't want to admit to, and they don't want me talking. They have ways to shut me up, and I have been shut up for a long time. I have been just a dove, a sheep in black wolf country, being wise as a serpent, not opening my mouth until now. God is opening my mouth now. A lot of things have transpired as far as YouTube and other people that have tried to whistleblow on this and have tried to talk on this and tried even to speak on the truth of church and state, but has been silent quietly. God knows what he's doing. They're not going to admit to these secrets because it's a uniform, unformed code that benefits us. So they didn't take it out, the benefits out completely. They just dressed it up. So our jurisdiction in the Constitution of the United States mentions 3 areas of jurisdiction in which the courts may be operating in, unless there's some big time secret that they didn't record. But you can bet that all of it's under recording. So common law is based on God's law. It's the affidavit of natural status that you can do, or it's a UCC filings that you can go through. So it's different ways to go through this, but naturally it's not black, so you can't go through it naturally. It's black. So anytime someone is charged under the common law, there must be a damaged party. You are free under the common law to do anything you please. So as long as you do not infringe on the life or liberty or property of someone else, you have a right to make a fool of yourself. You want to ride with no seatbelt? Completely on you. But you have the right to make a fool of yourself, provided you to do not infringe on someone else's life, take their liberty, or take their property of anybody else. No one else. Not even your own mother. You still bubbling out of purse, and you broke your common law. So the common law does not allow for any government agency to take action on a man to try to prevent a man from making a fool of himself, because they're not that man's mom or daddy or that man's God. So for instance, when you cross over the state line in most states, you will see a sign which says buckle your seatbelts. It's the law. So this cannot be common law, because who will you injure if you do not buckle up? You might injure yourself. You get an accident. So nobody else. So this would be completely compelled performance. So to compel you to perform is like the cowboy movies when they take the gun and shoot at their feet and say dance. That's exactly what they're doing. But common law cannot compel performance, because it is God's law. This is not the way that God operates. You know, God doesn't shoot lightning bolts at your feet and say dance. You know, this is compelled performance given on by who's acting as a God or mom and daddy, which is the law. But common law cannot compel performance, and it does not. Any violation of common law is a criminal act, and it is punishable. So enough. So I am going to end part 1 right here, and if you like to see part 2, which is should get more deep and more interested, I want you to like, share, and subscribe, and wait on the premiere of Annual Laws with a Colorful Attribute, which is our special edition of a 777 Awakening News with our Red Pill newsletter. And I'm your host, Tommy, signing out.